All right. Good Thinking Weekly. This is episode 38 already. Wow. Getting up there. Exciting times. Yeah. A lot to dig into. And I'm at a crossroads. There's two things that I really want to dig in. But I think we've put this into brevity. So I'm going to give you a big picture and we can decide how we want to move. So I think one of the things is obviously knowing me, like, is optimizing the whole AG-1 thing with Starbucks. I think is something, and people have so many feelings about it, and I certainly have feelings about it. And then the other thing that really stood out to me, again, not going to be shocking, but the return of specialty retailer. Talking about Stephen Allen and the line that you put in there really hit as far as, having taste is the future. And I think that's really true. So feelings, digging in one or the other.
Those are meaty. Let's do both. We'll try and keep them let's try to keep them to like 7 minutes each. Short and sweet, but deep discussion. Let's go light with Starbucks AG-1 because I think that's a lighter topic, personally.
Great. Okay, perfect. You want to give a little bit of an overview? The first link wasn't working, so jump in.
Sorry, guys. Well, the Starbucks. I am a big Starbucks fan, so take all of this with a grain of salt. Recently introduced the ability to add AG-1 to basically anything. It seems it's not like prescriptive. It's not like you can add some powder scoop of AG-1 to a refresher. What I thought was the most fascinating was that you can also just ask for it with ice water. And I was like, whoa, that just felt like huge. So that's where my mind was blown. I couldn't get over that.
Because it doesn't have a Starbucks, doesn't have a coffee aspect in it. That is a completely separate experience. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And like it reminded me of when La Boulange came out, right? And it was like introduction of this other. Well, was it amazing? I mean, let's go back. Let's remember how we all felt about that.
In San Francisco, where I was at the time, it was amazing because La Boulange is from there.
Well, maybe the place La Boulange was great, but that partnership was just a meltdown of a disaster.
Fair.
Everything tasted horrible. It was so confusing because there was this other brand in there. The brand felt completely disjointed. Oh, you can just have AG-1 without any Starbucks product. It felt like a moment where Starbucks lost its brand for a second. If that's really sanctioned, then I'm worried for them. If it's unsanctioned, then they need to roll that back, in my opinion. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because I know you're a big AG-1 fan. Despite my many links that I've sent you to try to convince you otherwise.
I mean, the greens world is like a whole world, like in and of itself, and really digging into the best green. And I've tried different ones, and I'm taking AG now, and who knows what the future holds. But I think I have a lot of feelings, and I think there's in general a lot of feelings on it. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, it gives them a huge market, but I think one of the interesting things about AG, and you and I have talked about this, is the product hasn't changed, but it used to be kind of this feeling like not super elevated, like not super graphic, just kind of like you wouldn't even notice it on the shelf. They did a rebrand. Just a rebrand. They didn't change anything about the product, just the visuals. I think they did some wild postings, maybe a few things to kind of get the rebrand out there, and then it completely changed the game for them. So I think that's an interesting play just from a brand standpoint. And I think one of the things that this does from a brand standpoint, it makes me less interested in them. It makes me I'm more interested in going and finding the things that are at Erewhon, and that's like the next version of them, where now at Starbucks, it's like, ooh, if they're partnering with such a kind of commercial entity, are they still upholding the ingredients and the way that they're creating all of those parts and pieces?
They haven't been upholding the ingredients from the beginning, so that's not even a conversation. But you can continue to ignore my emails on such subjects. But listener, please be aware that she is aware that the ingredients are not good anyway. Anywho, I think the credibility of that with kind of the tastemakers, I'm not sure that AG-1 has never really been for the tastemaker. Huberman, I don't see him as a tastemaker.
Yeah, Rich Roll. Rich Roll is, though. There's a lot of people that,
There's a world of that, but I wouldn't call them tastemakers. To me, they're different. They're culture shifters for sure, but they're not tastemakers. Like, I'm not going to them because they have like the most exquisite taste like Erewhon has. I'm going to them because I think that they are optimizing and living the culture and the like mentality that I want, but not because I think they have good taste. And those things are very different, which might be a segue into our next topic, but we're not ready to go there yet, because I do want to talk about why this would be good for Starbucks.
Because it's interesting. Like, I think to me, it's a brand and I think perception play, and they're almost opposite, right? So for Starbucks, they're like, oh, we could have this cool, it signifies health. I think they think it's kind of a tastemaker product, that it signifies like, you're in the know, right? Health in the know, and then starting to kind of everybody's like, I can talk about supplements till the day comes home, and powders and all of those types of things. When I was in Hawaii, there was this amazing coffee bar at the One, and they would put in collagen, or they can put in protein, or they could put in all these things. So it's a thing, it's already happening, and I think Starbucks is trying to leverage that and figure out how they do it. So I think they chose AG. It's big enough that they can actually supply it. It feels like, I think to them, this is my assumption, feels like a cool enough brand, kind of all of those parts in place to help elevate Starbucks and kind of put them in that world. Whereas to me, it almost does the opposite with AG, right? It gives them obviously a huge audience, huge exposure from a brand standpoint, but from a brand standpoint, it makes me think a little bit less of them because they're going the commercial route versus kind of the independent, more holistic route.
Yeah. I mean, I think they've been going the commercial route from day one. So to me, they're on their trajectory.
She's got feelings.
I do think I do. That's interesting though, about like trend of kind of pulling together all of these kind of adding collagen. Like, I could definitely see Vital Proteins being at Starbucks. Right. Like, that feels the right kind of level brand for them too. So yeah, I mean, I think for Starbucks's play, I think it's a relevant play. I think where I struggle with it is that, like, to not develop like proprietary take on AG-1 feels like a real miss. Like, if you can, I think that's exactly it. Then it's strange.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the nugget. Like, when you're going to do something like this, especially a big brand like that, make sure that everything you're doing is at the proprietary level. Like, create some amazing thing that now the kids are all going to be talking about. Like, they're no longer like the strawberry acai or whatever the hell Hudson's drinking now, but it's like the next version of that. And you're calling it, Starbucks Green or whatever it is, so that they're really owning that experience versus just like another brand at the counter. I think that's the nugget.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I think this isn't really like, it's not geared at the kids, and I think that's fine. But I do think there are additional things that you could be kind of like, I do think like one of the things I think that is going on with this is that there's so much awareness now around calories, and like, obviously Starbucks and calories aren't like always the friendliest. And so people's awareness around that, and like everything going on with, weight loss drugs and GLP-1s and everything is tying into this. So into this decision making.
For sure.
I don't think that necessarily these are going after the kids, but I do think they're adding things for kids is obviously an opportunity.
Yeah. No, I just mean that in the way of, Hudson doesn't say we're going to go to Starbucks. What he refers to his drink, and he refers to the experience that he's going to get there, and that language versus saying that we're going to go to Starbucks. Like, for you and I, if there was some great AG something and we were traveling and we were going to get our regular Starbucks, which we do as we're traveling, and I didn't have greens or I needed more, it would be really easy for me to be like, and let's get a blah, 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 whatever that proprietary green shot
name
that Starbucks should be creating.
Yes,
exactly.
Agreed. All right. Agreed. All right, let's segue into having taste, because
yes, I mean, Stephen Allen, like, couldn't be happier. Just, I agree with you. It's his moment. He's such a rad human, and he's done so much. Like, we were buying from Stephen back in Louis' days, so like the guy's been around for a minute and always been, the guy who's been creating and curating that elevated fashion in New York, in my opinion. That's the
piece. And that's, I think in the letter I referred to him as kind of like, he was like pre-Substacker, like knows how to pull together the right pieces. Obviously, That's not everything that happens on Substack, but just kind of as the example of curation. I just think that we're moving back towards specialty in a way. We've been moving there for a while, but I think that is becoming increasingly the conversation. And I think actually brands, what's going on in Substack is actually contributing to this.
Mm-hmm.
Because previously, like, how would you find these small brands, right? And there were people like Stephen Allen, and then there weren't people like Stephen Allen because they all went out of business or they all gave up because it was too difficult.
Yeah.
And now there's Substack, and now we have the ability to kind of like share very personal perspectives, I think, is what that's my opinion of what's going on, is that we are returning to a place where, like, I want Kirsten's take on it. Like, I'm not looking for like 50-year-old women's take on things. Like, I'm not even looking for LA versions of what you're giving me. I'm looking for your version of what you're giving me. And I think that is really making a huge comeback. It will be at the same time, I think mall brands are coming up. And so I think it's a really like interesting kind of like thing that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going to swing for holiday? Like, what will happen, you know?
Right. I mean, I think the interesting thing out of this is obviously a huge fascination within retail, but I think your point, again, having taste is the future, and using Taylor Lorenz as an example. Like, it's not just fashion specific, it's not just retail specific, it's in the fucking general world about having taste and things being curated and things being specialty. And I think that is really like, let me think about that for a minute and see all of the various worlds that then has an impact on. That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked, I mean, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, but we've talked in general in life about how previously there were so many subcultures, right? And then because of TikTok, because of Instagram, then like there was even more niche, like even more niche sub brands. Like, I don't even know. I can't even call them like subcultures because they were but they were subcultures. And now it's like we've really honed in to the individual perspective on each one. And I think, like, consequently, like, no one really knows where culture is going, and this is where culture is going. So it's fascinating, right?
Right. Well, and it's also interesting with like the celebrity model, which I think this isn't necessarily a part of. I think the influencer, which is influencing in a different way. To me, this is truly influencing versus like just holding something there, being Kim Kardashian and holding something and being like, yeah, I like this. Like, and I think it's really that, especially I think there's an integrity behind it, because you're really getting that POV from that person's world. Again, whatever it is, whether it's retail, fashion, or, juice.
Yeah. And I think it's also effort. People are really like responding to effort now. And I think that there is so much less appetite for kind of low lift kind of pushes. We need the whole effort, the energy of finding the great thing again, the specific reason, the fact that you've actually tried it, the fact that you've actually tried it for 7 months, that you really like do use that soap, like all of those credibility things are coming back in, because I think there's so much fatigue of, like, even in the news I was reading, GPL1s are not the conversation of this topic, but I've been thinking about them a lot. And there's influencers now who are talking about them, and they've been on them for 1 week. How are you influencing on something that changes you over months when you've been on it for a week? So I think people there's a lot of fatigue around that. So
yeah. So the credibility, the effort, and the curation, really, that's what's hitting.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so cool to see Stephen come back, like, and have his own shop. Like, I think that what is trickling off of one online will come back to brick and mortar. Like, I think we're seeing it with Big Night and other places like that. So I do think, like, there is going to be this trickle back of these actual places that people want to go. And I think shopping.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Because I mean, I think we know, like we want to physically be there, right? We want to experience it. We can research online and look at the socials and all the things, but we want to go and research it. I think there is somewhat of a nostalgia, but like being in a relevant way. Like I think Steven's opening, and I think it's going to be amazing, and not in a nostalgic. Oh, remember when? It's going to be like the right things for today. And I think like it was interesting. I saw something on the socials as far as there was a Gap reunion, and Nikki was there, and all of the people, and I saw something around Nike, and they were talking about like their original manifesto and things like that. Like I think there's a bit of kind of returning to these roots, if you will, but playing it through in a really meaningful way today, not about like yesteryear, but about like how this is still relevant today.
Totally. Yeah. No, I think it's a really interesting time. And I think what will be interesting is to see who rises to the top. Will it be a lot more legacy players coming back, or will it also be like the likes of like the people who are on Substack now? Will they start to have curated pop-ups, that people are seeking out, which I think is what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Can't wait.
Fun times.
Indeed. I love it. All right. Under 20. We did it.
Let's do it. Ciao,
Till
everyone.
next time.